Guru Nation, what's up? I want you all to negotiate better contracts, better budgets. So today I actually did one for a client of mine. Actually, they're not a client, but somebody that paid me on the side to negotiate their contract. And so this is just inspiration for creating this video. So one of the things to pay attention to, okay, and once you're in this industry for a long enough period of time, you're gonna kind of understand who is like every sponsor is notorious for something else, right? Like I'm not gonna mention names, but if you're doing this long enough, you're gonna start recognizing patterns. Well, in this particular contract I negotiated, the sponsor is notoriously cheap when it comes to paying for record reimbursement. So every study is going to require the site to maintain records and all that stuff. Well, in this contract, they didn't even have a fee for that. It's just expected that the site takes care of this. And so, of course, I put it in there. We calculated it out. If you use a vendor like Iron Mountain, okay, it's going to cost at least $100 a month. And if you don't have any other studies, there's no way to subsidize this from other studies. So what a lot of sites do is they get a bunch of studies and then they'll pay Iron Mountain, and they'll kind of take or negotiate this fee, the document storage fee, from every single sponsor. But if you only have one study and the sponsor doesn't know, I mean, if you only have one study, you could actually negotiate the full amount. So in this particular contract, the sponsor's requiring the site to hold the records for 10 years. Well, Iron Mountain charges $100 a month today, if not more. They might even charge $150 a month, but let's just assume $100 a month today in November 2017. So by 2026, when you're on year 9, there's no saying what that price could be. It could be $300 a month, right? And you're stuck paying that, or you could bring them to the clinic. Now, sponsor can counteract with, or make a counter and say, well, that's way too much. Let's go down a bit. So I'd go down to about $5,000 as an startup, non-refundable, invoiceable fee that they pay you. Do not let them pay you based on subjects you enrolled. Okay, try to negotiate, try to get that all up front. And then if you can, keep the records at your clinic until it's no longer feasible for you to do that, and then ship it to Iron Mountain. That way you operate more lean, and you can use that money for other things like your overhead. Another counter they can argue is that this is part of your overhead policy. So make sure in your overhead policy, most sites do put maintenance maintenance and storage in their overhead policy. So I would take it out. Okay, if that's their counter argument. Hopefully they haven't seen it yet. If they have, you can just say, well, I discussed with the PI, and this is actually not our current overhead policy does not account for this, and we're going to need to charge more, because this doesn't even take into account just simple inflation. All right, so that's one thing that, and again, every sponsor develops their own reputation over time. You'll know which ones they are. Let's see, what else? This contract. So pay attention when the CRO is negotiating the contract on behalf of the sponsor and the CRO pays the site. Don't let any clause in the contract stay in there in regards to CRO will only pay site when the sponsor pays the site. Okay, that's BS. The CRO should pay you. If the CRO is going to be paying you, they need to pay you for the work performed. Whether they get paid by the sponsor or not should not matter to you. So this is especially important when you're dealing with small biotech companies that go out of business. All right, I've heard horror stories from other research clinics. And then the CRO says, well, in the contract it said if we don't get paid from the sponsor, we can't pay the sites. So don't let that be in your contract. That's another thing to pay attention to. And more these days, CROs are taking over these negotiations, and there's a bunch of biotechs out there. Try to get paid within 30 days. Don't accept quarterly payments. If you've been watching the videos long enough, you know that. What else? See, in this particular contract, storage. So they were pretty cheap on storage in this particular contract. Letter of indemnification, so make sure you get that. Make sure there's a clause in there that the PI or the site will be held harmless if patients end up getting sick or getting injured or getting harmed. As long as you're following good clinical practice in the protocol, you should not be liable for any damages. I'm not an attorney. Make sure you consult an attorney on this. Overhead policy should be 40%. Try to push for that. And it'd be impossible to negotiate a fair budget without having a schedule of assessments in front of you. And what sponsors and CROs have been doing, increasingly so, is just breaking down what each visit will pay you without having an schedule of assessment. So it's up to you to actually pull out the schedule of assessments on an Excel sheet and then go through the fair market value for each item, which you can find through your physician's medical biller if they have one. So yeah, those are the basics. Just make sure you negotiate better contracts. It's going to help all us sites out in the long run. Talk to you soon, Guru Nation. Don't make rookie mistakes. Take care.